Hi, welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. I'm Ross. I'm here with my co-host Calum, and today we're going to consider the question: if there's only one grappler you can watch this weekend, who's it going to be? And that's taking in the IBJJF Pan Championships, Pan American Championships that are happening in America, and the Polaris welterweight Grand Prix that's happening in the UK. So there's loads of grapplers on these events. There's loads of great grapplers on these events. There's loads of divisions to watch. And we're going to try and narrow it down as to who we think are the standouts in each competition that are worth watching. So, Calum, who is your standout athlete of the weekend that you're going to be paying particularly close attention to?
Yeah, so the guy I'm most looking forward to watching is definitely Jozef Chen in the Polaris event. So obviously Jozef's had a massive year kind of coming into the public light. Obviously only been training a short amount of time, so that's part of the reason why. But what we've seen of him so far has been very exciting. Also some very innovative techniques, which I also really like watching those guys that kind of do their own thing. They don't just kind of copy and paste all the stuff from like Gordon and Danaher. They've got like their own innovations. In the case of Jozef Chen, it's kind of with the tripod passing stuff, which I'm a big fan of. So hopefully looking forward to seeing some of that in action as well.
Jozef Chen, one of the contenders in the welterweight Grand Prix that Polaris is putting on. Let's run through the other names on the card. Calum, let's test your memory. Who do we have?
I think the toughest matchup for Jozef will be PJ Barch. So PJ, 4th place at the last ADCC Worlds in the 77 kilo division. I think this will be a tough one for Jozef. Jozef's got a very well-rounded game, but I think the reason it'll be tough is he's got a good guard, good passing, a good stand than Jozef does, but typically we tend to see him prefer wrestling and passing, which we don't know if he's going to be able to get his passing off against PJ, given how high caliber of a wrestler PJ is. So that'll be a really good match to see. Hopefully they're at opposite ends of the bracket, so we can see that in the final if that takes place. But looking forward to that one if that comes up.
Okay, that's one.
As well, I've got Davis Asari. So Davis just coming off of silver at ADCC Trials, the one that Jozef didn't do because he'd won the one before that. So that'll be interesting as well. In that Trials, Davis managed to beat his teammate over Taza. I think they had another match on a smaller show in America, which went 1-for-1 on that. I think Taza won that one. So obviously Jozef had a reasonably competitive, tight match with Taza. So we'll see how he does against his teammate Davis. Obviously Davis is making big strides as well, coming from relative obscurity to being one of the top guys in that division now. So that'll be exciting to see. And then we've got the Bolo Bros. They're not teammates or anything, but both quite similar games. We've got Espen Mathisen, and we've got Levi Jones-Leary. More promising, I think, slightly is Levi, just given how we've seen his game translate a little bit more in the Nogi. We've seen a little bit more of him in the Nogi. Not seen a massive amount from either, but again, bringing it back to Taza, we've seen Levi against Taza. I can't remember who came out in that match. I think it was pretty close, but we've seen Levi take Taza's back with the Bolo. And I think that kind of game, especially with the Nogi specialist guys, a lot of them won't be as familiar with it, so could potentially catch out guys like PJ Barch and Jozef Chen. As well, we have the guy that won the Polaris Contenders Tournament, whose name slips my mind, if you want to remind me.
I do want to remind you, and I will. Harrison Woods.
Harrison Woods. Do you know where he trains out of?
I think he's Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're putting me on the spot a little bit with a test of memory, but I don't know a huge amount about him other than he came through the Polaris Contenders, and I saw some snippets on Instagram of him in action. So he is sort of an outlier in this, just in terms of everyone else carries a bit more weight with their name.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see who he gets in the first round.
Probably the number one seed, who we don't know who that's going to be yet. Potentially Jozef, potentially PJ, you'd think.
I think PJ should be number one seed based on credentials.
Yeah. Remember him back. I think that's definitely what they did for the last one. I think Morrison won the tournament last time and he had John Corley first round. That's probably how they're going to do it this time, I would imagine. And then two other guys are slipping my mind a little bit. If you want to help me out.
You have still got to mention, let's see if I can lead you along the way, a recent ADCC trials champion.
Pablo.
Luis Paulo, yeah. So, he's obviously coming off a good run in the first South American trials. So he's very much in form coming into the event. Seems to be very well-rounded, but again, you know, I think he's a good guard player, and this tournament does seem to be heavy on guard players, which it'll be interesting when guard player goes against guard player, but also when they go against a strong wrestler or someone who favours passing, to see how they get on. So, but that, and then last one, another very much informed grappler, Max Hansen, who I was doing a little bit of research, and he's had fairly recent victories over Johnny Tama, Jeremy Skinner, Oliver Taza, and Dominic Mejia. That is a good list to have on your resume, I would suggest.
Yes, I don't think he's had the same level of kind of high-profile competition success. I think that was at one of the recent Invictus tournaments with Jeremy Skinner and Taza. But yeah, obviously some great names there that have beaten some of the guys in that division. So it'd be great to see him in this tournament being on form as well.
Yeah, so that, I believe, I was ticking off as we went along, gives us 8 names. You're most interested in seeing Jozef Chen.
Yeah.
First off, do you think Jozef is the favourite to win, or would you list someone else as being favourite?
It's hard to say. You'd have to kind of depend what you're judging it off of, I think. You could argue that for the kind of Polaris rule set, Jozef Chen as well, he's been on good form recently. But as far as like credentials, getting 4th place at ADCC is more than anything Jozef done as of yet, as he's not been to ADCC World yet, even though he's qualified to go this year. So that toss-up between those two, I couldn't really tell you how they're going to judge that to make the number one seed, but definitely one of those two, I would think.
And do you see any of the other ones that we've mentioned posing a particular problem with the style that they play? So, for example, do you think someone like Levi Jones-Leary is going to be able to go through the bracket with his ability to take people's backs? Or are you expecting to see someone who, you know, maybe a bit more rounded, make it all the way through, having different challenges in each match against different opponents? They'll be challenged in different ways, so you might need more strings to your bow. How do you think it'll go?
Yeah, well, the two extremes of that, I think Max's game's a bit more well-rounded. He's beaten ADCC vets recently like Taza, like Jeremy. So I think, yeah, he's got the potential just as well-roundedness to go quite far, but I do have Levi as quite a dark horse just given the specificity of his game and how he's done against guys like Taza. I think he did mention that he thinks he can take everyone's back in this division, and he thinks that he can submit everyone. I think he can definitely take a lot of these guys' backs, like Jozef, PJ, but I don't know the way these guys' games are going, like putting a lot of time into like back defense and turtle, just because that's what the ADCC rule set kind of favors. We'll see if he actually manages to do anything with the back, but I definitely think he's got like potential to take these guys back, so we'll see what he can do with that if he does get that.
All right, and then let's dive a little bit deeper into the choice of Jozef. You look at the event, you look at the names on it, you see Jozef Chen, you think, yes, I am definitely tuning in for that. Why do you feel that way?
I think Jozef's got a super exciting style. If you saw his run at trials, hit a lot of submissions, but even in the matches he didn't hit submissions, it was super exciting. He was managing to do things that you don't typically see people do, like passing Tommy Langaker's guard. He managed to do that twice. Like I said before as well, like the innovations that we kind of see from him, I like watching those kind of guys because we only tend to see the details in their game from them instead of just like a kind of more generic style. So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some more of his passing, which I think is quite innovative.
Okay. There's some other matches on the show. On the main card, we have Ffion Davies against Brianna St. Marie, which I believe is a rematch of the ADCC final from last time around, which Ffion won quite convincingly on points. Do you think she'll have too much for Brianna this time around as well, or do you sense what probably would be an upset could be in the offering?
Yeah, potentially, but I don't know what adjustments Brianna's made since then, but Fion's looked really good in the time since that match as well. She'll be at home, you know, kind of have all the advantages going her way. Fion definitely my favourite female grappler to watch. We'll enjoy her style, her guard passing and everything, so I'm looking forward to seeing that match, but I do think Ffion will come away with a win in that match again.
Yeah, I think Fion's been on an absolute tear of late. It's 12 wins in a row, possibly. I'm going off BJJ Heroes statistics, so they might have the odd match that they've not accounted for, but it looks like Fion's on a great winning run and is certainly
losing recently at all. Last time I can think was actually in the women's absolute for the Polaris. I think she lost to one of the bigger competitors in that, which was a long time ago, so yeah, I don't really remember any recent losses from her.
Well, that's reassuring, because if my statistics check out with both the BJJ Heroes and Calum Burke databases, then I think I'll be on the right track. And then we have the match that has a late replacement. We have Keith Krikorian going up against Cammy Donnelly, who is taking the place of the injured Owen Jones. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, I think this match was originally supposed to be Gabriel Souza versus Owen Jones. I think they're both replacements. I think Keith jumped in to replace Gabriel Souza, then Owen got injured, and then Cammy jumped in for that. So looking forward to this match. I think we've obviously seen Cammy against some guys that have been to ADCC and beat them, like Camille Wilk and Sam McNally. But I think Keith has got a really well-rounded game, very high level with wrestling, leg lock and passing, guard. So we'll see how this goes. I'm really interested to see Cammy against someone of this caliber, but I do see Keith coming away with a win in this one. But regardless, I'm looking forward to watching the match.
And there's various other matches on both the undercard, which is broadcast on YouTube, and the main card, which is broadcast on UFC Fight Pass. I think there are a lot worse things you could spend £7 on a Saturday night than buying a month's worth of UFC Fight Pass and getting access to this show and the whole back catalogue. So I think, especially if you're in the UK and it's on at a good time for us to watch it, I would definitely recommend getting this show. I think the tournament promises loads of interesting, exciting matches. There seems to be a lot of grapplers who have a lot of action within their game that are going to be up against each other. I don't think we're going to see boring wrestling, stalling, etc. I think guys are going to be going for each other, try to take backs, try to go for leg locks. So it should be exciting. And I think there's quite a few people that could come through. I'll lean towards PJ Barch with the wrestling advantage, but I do think you could have a case for quite a few of the guys that are in here. So interesting tournament, and I like as well that it's probably a tournament amongst guys who are, they're not ranked like 1, 2, or 3 in the world at the weight class. So there's really good guys here, but they're coming in just under that like ADCC podium level, shall we say. Even although PJ nearly got on the podium last time around. So I think it's good to have guys around about that level battling out each other and see who comes out on top, and then that'll impact how we're looking at ADCC Worlds in August, and we're thinking, oh, who could come through and challenge like the big guns at that weight class. So
I believe that this tournament is for a shot at Mateusz Jasinski's belt for the 170 as well. So some interesting potential matchups with Mateusz as well. So we'll see how that goes.
So who would you like to see go up against Mateusz then, out of all these guys?
I think in a longer kind of time period, I'd like to see another match with Jozef versus Mateusz. I think any match those two have together will be super entertaining and good to watch from a strategic and technical point of view. PJ as well will be a good one, I think, to see. Quite a difference in styles between the two of them. And then as well, I think Mateusz is one of the best guys at utilising the berimbolo in the nogi, so it'd be cool to see him against a guy like Levi, see if Levi can stay away from the leg danger and keep it into a little bolo battle. That would be quite interesting to see as well.
Okay. There's another big event on this weekend, the Pans in America, one of the majors that the IBJJF put on, and it'll be the last one before the Worlds, and it will be a great indicator as to like who's in great form going into the Worlds in a couple of months' time. Calum, do you have a question for me?
Who's your one to watch from Pans?
My one to watch at the Pans is Fabricio Andrey.
Why is that?
And my reasoning is not because of the amazing grappling highlights that we have seen from Fabricio of late. So if you followed his run at the second ADCC South American trials, you'll have seen him submit all but one of his opponents, and then even then in the final against Kaya Gabriel, he had him locked in a submission as time expired. So you can pretty much say that Fabricio went through that all.
And as the time expired as well, and it's difficult to get rid of that submission, so yeah.
We'll give him it. And not only that, but there were some highlight reel submissions. The most memorable one would be the jumping / flying armbar that he hit. So obviously he's looking sharp, but as much of an all-action grappler that he is, he always gets referred to as a dog. I think that's a compliment in terms of his grappling. I'm looking forward to seeing Fabricio at the Pans because of narrative, which I think's a huge thing in sport. And as much as I like to see two guys who are awesome at jiu-jitsu going up against each other, what really puts it over the edge for me is some backstory. So I will attempt to give some backstory as to why I'm wanting to see Fabricio Andrey. And the main contenders that Fabricio will face at the Pans at featherweight are Isaac Doderling, he's seeded number 1, Kennedy Maciel, and the brothers Alex and Diego Sodri. So first off, on a potential rematch of Fabricio and Isaac, they faced each other at an IBJJF event called The Crown, and Isaac came out narrow winner. It was a very close match. It was good to see two former world champions go up against each other. So with like that prestigiousness around the match, and then we saw Isaac play a lot of guard, a lot of lasso, saw Fabricio play a lot on top. And I love, in terms of what you were saying, watching grapplers, I love watching how Fabricio plays against lasso spider kind of variations. He's got a really nice deep squat, stays not too close, not too far away, and then once he breaks free, he causes chaos. In that match, he wasn't able to cause much chaos against Isaac, and then Isaac went for a leg lock attempt near the end. Isaac's got amazing leg locks, amazing foot lock, and it was only then that it started to open up a little bit. So I would like to see those two go up against each other again. Fabricio come in with a little bit of spice, a little bit more fuel on the fire because of that recent close defeat, and then to really see some moments in the match where Fabricio gets free and goes to cause some chaos, or Isaac commits earlier to the foot lock, and that gives Fabricio a chance to counter, or you never really might have to submit. So we have that narrative going on. Then we have Kennedy, Maciel against Fabricio would be two trials winners from the recent South American trials going against each other. So that's an interesting story in itself. They'd be competing in the gi, but they could end up competing against each other at the ADCC finals. And then if they do, and there's a previous match, it adds to the story there. And then we have Fabricio against the two Sodres, both most recent matches against them, he had narrow losses. He's beaten them before, but the most recent ones are narrow losses. So I think if we get a Fabricio with a bit more spice, a bit more determination to avenge what's happened recently, I think we might see even more amazing grappling from Fabricio Andrey. You know, an extra 1 or 2%. What could that give us? So that's the reason why I want to see Fabricio, not just because of how he plays. Who do you think might come through that division? I've kind of ran through the top 5 contenders.
Yeah, featherweight is such an interesting division right now in the gi, just because like they've not really had a dominant champion since Hafa and Carbinia retired. So there's kind of been jumping about. I think the last like 3, 4, 5 have all consecutively been different people winning. So definitely one of the most competitive divisions, one of the most talent-rich divisions, and really good division in the fact that it's kind of got that nice middle ground between the higher divisions where like there's not as much guard play, and then like the really low divisions where it's kind of like all guard play and there's not as much passing. It's kind of a nice middle ground between the two of those. So either of those guys, like you said before, could come out on top, but really hard to pick. I'm just going to enjoy watching it, to be honest.
Yeah. So when I went through the Pans brackets, that's what I was really looking for in terms of a division with a lot of contenders who could take the title, a lot of interesting matchups, but also like who's got the most interesting story around about them just now. And I think Fabricio's picked up a lot of plaudits of late for how he's been performing. But then when I saw that he had some recent defeats to some of the guys that he could face, I thought, oh, that's interesting. Could be out for a bit of revenge. So with the Pans, there's some divisions that are a bit deeper than others in terms of like absolute elite competitors. So I think at like either end of the scale, we have Roosterweight, we have Taliesin, #1 seed. I think he'd be favoured to come through. At the other end, we have super heavy Eric Muniz, one of the favourites of the podcast. Love watching him grapple, but as much as I love watching him grapple, I don't see a huge amount of backstory or any contenders that can provide, you know, something different for him to face this time around. We have Gutenberg, the top weight class, kind of falls into the same category. Heavyweight, we might see a rematch of Felipe Andrew against Adam Verdzinski. They're seeded 1 and 2. They've had some interesting battles of late. So, you know, if that is the final, I'll check that out. Again, we could have a rematch of a match we saw recently. Mika Galvao against Andy Murasaki at middleweight. So do you think it would likely go the same again, Calum, or do you think Andy could pose any other challenge to Mika?
I think so, yeah. I was quite impressed with his ability to sweep Mika in their last match, but yeah, I just think Mika operates in a different level of speed to Andy, and I kind of see not necessarily the same thing happen again, but I do see Mika definitely coming away with the win again for that match.
Yeah, so we love Andy's top game, and I think Andy's top game is an absolute nightmare for anyone else in that division. But it just seems that Mika's got all the answers for anything that anyone throws at him just now. And he's on a mission to win all the IBJJF majors and then take the ADCC title as well this year. So he's fired up. At the medium heavy division, we do have Hugh Anderson and Francisco Lowe in there. So we could see some all action matches with those guys. So we might see some Instagram highlights. But it's not a division I'm going to do a deep dive into. And I know I'm bouncing around a little bit. We've covered feather. I'll come back to light because that is a division with a bit of depth to it that I'm going to keep an eye on as well. I want to talk about light feather just in the context of there's someone in there who I would put in the same category as Jozef Chen right now. And that is the grappler's grappler. So, rightly so, we hear a lot of chat about Jozef just now. I think not just because of how he's performed, and we've mentioned one of the best trials runs ever when he won the first Euros trials, but I think he's very erudite, he's very intelligent, he's got a great way of explaining grappling, he's an engaging character, he's slightly different to, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys or guys involved in combat sports, he's very considerate and careful in what he says. So I think he's a very engaging character, and I've subscribed to his Patreon for the last couple of months, and there's good content there. Been enjoying the breakdowns of matches he's done recently, so I am invested in Jozef Chen right now. But I would say that a lot of people are, and he's in that grappler's grappler category. And then so is Diego Pato. He is also picking up a lot of interest, particularly because there's been some breakdowns come out with, in particular, his leg lock game. And Calum made the bold claim that Pat was the best leg locker in the world right now. That was a few podcasts ago. You didn't hear Calum say that, so I don't know if he still stands by that statement, but he still stands by that statement. But this is in the gi, so we're not going to see the heel hooks that Pato has been hitting. So, still amazing leg attacks, and his game's much wider than that. But I would say he's in that grappler's grappler category, where if I am watching him, it's going to be to see kind of like how he's playing, what he's doing, what I can pick up on. There's Malachi Edmund and Tomoyuki Hashimoto in the bracket that can pose him a bit of a test. But I'm not hugely invested in like the backstory of any of those matches. So I wanted to pose a different reason as to why I am interested in my one to watch. But no doubt you'll be watching Pablo to see what he comes up with, Calum, yes?
Yeah, same for Tomoyuki as well. I think he's got some of the best guard retention in the world, so I always like watching his matches to pick up some stuff from that.
Good. And then there's only I think one more division I didn't really touch on the male side of the competition, and that is lightweight. Pablo Lavicelli's rated number 1. But we also have another guy we've highlighted on the podcast, Elijah Dorsey. He's at number 2. There's Nathan Chung, Jackson Nagai. I think as well, if I remember the brackets correctly, Lavicelli's got Michael Liera first round, and the winner gets Johnny Tama. So there could be some exciting matches in there, and that's probably the division I would say has got the most amount of depth with competitors that are kind of close to each other. Out of those names, do you have anyone you would favour to come through, Calum?
Yeah, Pablo's looked really good recently, obviously making massive strides at AOJ, but Elijah also on really good form as well, so interesting to see those two go against each other. Probably have to pick Elijah if I was to pick one guy from that division.
And I scroll through the the female divisions. And again, it's like, I think there's interesting grapplers to watch. Mayasa Bastos, Bianca Basilio, Orly Laverne, who we saw do really well at ADCC trials. But for me, there's not that much narrative around any of those divisions. And that's what I'm looking for, especially with so much grappling on this weekend. It's going to be definitely a case of picking and choosing where one invests some time. So hopefully on the podcast, we've been able to help you do that. Let us know if you agree with our choices of Jozef, Chen or Fabricio Andrey being the ones to watch, or whether you've got any other guys. Did we miss anyone out as we're running through the divisions? After this weekend, I believe the next big event on the schedule is going to be ADCC West Coast Trials. If you've not listened to our interview with William Tackett, who's going to be one of the main contenders to take the under 88 kilogram title, and I'm not going to say the phrase that involves tickets and punching. I'm going to say book his place at the ADCC World Championships. Then you should definitely listen to William. I think it's a must listen to for any competitor, anyone who's got any interest in competitive grappling. There's loads of good advice in there. We based it around what it takes to win an ADCC trials, and Williams previously won the 77 kilogram trials. Calum, you're a competitor. What did you take from the interview?
Yes, well, obviously it was split into two parts. There was some advice on the day, some advice for prepping. So the advice of the day relating to warming up for every single match, being able to stay focused. That's something I can potentially implement down the line. And then the emphasis on cardio and well-roundedness as well in the preparation for competitions is something that I've taken.
Okay, so definitely give that a listen to, and then use it as a little preview for the trials. We'll be back with a full rundown of the West Coast trials, which is going to be quite the task, given that some divisions have already been capped off at 256 competitors. So we'll do our best to pick the ones to watch out of that. But for now, go and enjoy Polaris, go and enjoy the Pans. Let us know if we were right in our suggestions, and we'll be back soon with a deep dive into the ADCC West Coast trials.